Hi, everyone, and it's good to be back with the group, and good to be offering this talk. It kind of came to me while I was away traveling in Chile. Um, the question of why am I not enlightened yet, or how do I know if I'm enlightened? And that question that comes up in everybody's spiritual practice over time. I'm sure you've all asked that question at some point, maybe are asking it now, and that's why you're at this talk. I know I asked it many times over the years, and even answered it in certain ways. And came up with what I thought were the answers, and then sort of shifted what I was doing based on what I thought was the reason why I wasn't enlightened, permanently happy, and all the kind of attributes that we might see as going along with enlightenment, the enlightenment that we seek. Or maybe, why am I still reactive is another way to kind of look to say this, which is kind of seen as the opposite of being enlightened, right? It's why am I behaving in these old ways? I remember first I thought I would become enlightened if I was really good. I was kind of more in the Christian faith aspect, and if I did a lot of good deeds in the world, a lot of service in the world, and I lived a pure life, that this would be the path to awakening, to enlightenment. Of course, there's nothing wrong with living a pure life in terms of being on the path towards spiritual awakening. In fact, the Buddha has, the precepts, which are mindfulness practices that we engage in to endeavor not to harm people and to behave, ethically in the world. I kind of took it maybe a bit too far. I stopped having fun in a way. I stopped consuming any alcohol, caffeine, but was vegan. I just kind of, and the whole family had to go along with this as well. The kids were quite young, and they had to, go along with this. Now, of course, they see me eating meat and having the odd beer, and they go, why did you do this to us when we were kids? But that's just kind of where I was at, right? That's what I thought was required. Then I thought what I needed was the right teacher or the right teaching. So I went on this massive search around the world for the right teaching and the right teacher, and kind of test drove every spiritual tradition I could come in contact with. Really, I wanted to hear about them all. And I thought if I just got the right one, this would be the path to enlightenment. Then I believed that if I just meditated intensely enough, so I'd go on like long retreats or just self retreats where I would just meditate for long periods of time, or do other practices. I engaged in other types of other spiritual practices. And I figured if I just did these, with enough vigor, that the extraordinary enlightenment moment would come, right? And the reason it wasn't coming was because I wasn't, doing it enough, right? I had to meditate longer and so on. So I went through that, waiting for the extraordinary, fireworks or whatever, the big moment to come. In fact, I even convinced myself a few times that the big moment did come, right? Because if you meditate enough, you get some pretty extraordinary things happening in your vision and in your body and so on. You feel like your body's disappeared and so on. And you kind of think, well, this must be it. This must be enlightenment, right? Because I'm having this really extraordinary experience. But as I'll explain as I go on, these extraordinary experiences are really just byproducts of the process of awakening. So what I want to do here, and I think this is really important, that we are on the same kind of wavelength in terms of what enlightenment is, what it's not, what are some of the misunderstandings about it, and what we can actually, what we need to realize, I guess was one way to put it, in order for enlightenment to unfold in our lives. So many people think of enlightenment as an extraordinary or exotic event, right? Am I off on that kind of reading of what is kind of generally thought of what enlightenment would be like? It takes years of meditation, and it's going to be some explosive, extraordinary event. And you actually hear and read of the stories of people who have had extraordinary awakening events. There's a lot of books out there. I've read many of them, and I was always amazed at these extraordinary events, and it kind of fed into this desire to have some kind of exotic experience of my own. And I think part of that is it's a great story. Publishers love great stories, right? You go in and say, yeah, this happened, and then everything exploded out the top of my head, and fear vanished, and then these really detailed, amazing stories. It is much more publishable than, yeah, it just slowly dawned on me, just over time, it took years, it's kind of dawned on me that I'm probably not my body, I'm probably not my mind. The more I looked, and then it started to dawn on me that maybe I'm something else, and it's just kind of it'd be kind of a rambling, slow story. And so, of course, there's not a lot of books about that unfolding, and I think that's part of it, is just what gets published and what gets put out there. More books about the extraordinary experiences, when that is actually the minority. For most people, it's a gradual unfolding, a gradual process, kind of a slow dawning, or a realization of what you are not, which we've talked about a lot in these sessions. And then, of course, a realization of, okay, what is my true nature? And then a realization, what is the nature of this essential being, the nature of peace and love. So it kind of unfolds as you gradually go through these. I mean, the Buddha talked about seeing that you're not the five aggregates. Do you remember the five aggregates? It's kind of not a very catchy list name, but it's the five heaps of aspects. So you've got mental formations, which is thoughts and emotions. You have the body, rupa. You've got sense consciousness. You've got sense contact, the vedana, the feeling tone. So you've got these Buddhas that just go and see if that's who you are. So you're kind of investigating. So am I this body? Am I this mind? Do I have control over this mind, this body? And so you start to say, okay, well, this stuff just seems to be happening. So can that be me? And in Christianity, it's via negativa. You're kind of looking at what God is not. You're looking at so it's kind of a process of elimination in that regard. And then you turn to looking at what remains after all those impermanent, out of your control aspects are seen through. So I guess I'll just start by saying, stop looking for an extraordinary experience. Like, just stop it. Just don't do it. Don't give too many directives, but that'd be one to just kind of get you off on the right foot. Just figure it's going to be a slow burn, like it is for most people. And another misconception that is important to see is the misperception that awakening is rare or difficult. That it's rare or difficult. And this is probably the biggest barrier to its actual occurrence, or to its unfolding. It makes it impossible for it to occur if you have the belief that it's near impossible. Right? So, so how can you drop that belief? You could start by asking the question: how do I really know that the belief that awakening is rare and difficult is true or not? Just to suspend the belief that it's difficult. So how do I know? How do I really know that awakening is difficult or not? And when you suspend that belief, the possibilities open up, are endless. There's ultimate potential possibilities that open up. That's it. Just by suspending that belief that awakening is difficult, it becomes instantly possible. If you believe that it's difficult, that it's something that's going to happen in the distant future, that you have to be super compassionate or super whatever the image you have of an enlightened being is, then it's impossible. We spend a tremendous amount of energy in our lives remaining in the egoic dream state. It takes a tremendous amount of energy to actually to remain in this altered state of consciousness. So it's really a dropping of that struggle with the present moment. All that energy we use struggling and wanting and desiring and pushing away, struggling with what's unfolding moment to moment. So if you let go of this constant struggle, the possibility for awakening just naturally emerges. It just naturally unfolds. It's not something you do. It's not an experience you have. It's not something that happens to you. It's just something that unfolds and emerges naturally. So two things, I'll repeat them a little bit, is first realizing that enlightenment is neither extraordinary or difficult. And the second is realizing that enlightenment is not an event or an experience that a person has. Two really important elements. So we're not seeing it as something that's an extraordinary experience or an altered state of consciousness in some way. It's our natural state of consciousness. And it naturally emerges when the fascination with the content of our experience diminishes. You can still enjoy the content of your experience. I was just on a beautiful hiking trip in the Patagonia Mountains, and really enjoying the beauty of the natural environment. Of course, you realize when you're on those kinds of hikes that you have absolutely no control over what's going to happen moment to moment. You're just putting one foot in front of the other, and off you go, right? Especially in the furthest south you can go on in this hemisphere. The winds can go from a mild wind there is like 40 kilometer an hour, and they can pick up to very quickly to 70, where you literally can't walk. And so the environment is out of control, and you're walking on boulders and rocks. You could quite easily slip. I mean, there's just so many things that you realize are out of your control, but you can still move forward in that and enjoy being with the unfolding of whatever is going to happen, whatever it is. So although we're not fascinated by the content of our experience, we can still enjoy it. Yeah. And when this fascination diminishes or is transcended, then the way things really are is clearly seen. The present essential nature, I was going to use it, of nature unfolding, that essential, that seeing clearly that it is all nature unfolding, and we're just a part of the causes and conditions unfolding in nature. You see this, so this doesn't just happen once. You see this again and again, and that's why I say it's a slow unfolding. We've got here, it's important that you don't believe any of the thoughts and images that you have about awakening. They come and go, and they aren't created by you anyway. Thoughts come and go, and they're not created by you anyway. So we all have moments when we forget about the little me, the egoic self. And these are moments that we can, these are moments where we're glimpsing the truth. And these moments should not be diminished. You can actually dwell in those moments when you let go of the little me. So those glimpses of the truth can just kind of start to pile up more and more and more. And you can start to dwell in that which knows, rather than dwelling in that egoic mind that's always struggling. And the second item, that enlightenment is not an experience that happens to a person, or an experience that a person has, is also important, because we're also often looking for an experience to occur. Right? We'll go on a retreat and we'll look for something to happen, something extraordinary, but maybe something to happen. Or even when we meditate, finish the meditation, go, wow, I don't really feel all that much more peaceful. In fact, I feel a little agitated. Or, I was talking to Micah earlier, and he's, his retreat unfolded quite naturally and peacefully. And he made a core statement. He said, I didn't have a lot of expectations about what would unfold. So if you don't have an expectation that it's going to be peaceful, then if it's not peaceful, yeah, so that's this is what's going to unfold, and you can kind of go, oh, and when you have that attitude, even when things that aren't peaceful arise, they become peaceful because your essential nature is peace. Right? You can sit at an IMS retreat, Insight Meditation Society retreat, or any retreat anywhere, and the lawnmower can start up. I don't think they ever cut the lawn at IMS when the meditation is not in that. What's a leaf blower? Leaf blower. So what the mind can do a couple of things with this. Oh, I came here to be peaceful, and now they're blowing leaves around. Like, oh, and you could have a very unpeaceful, a very disturbed sitting, or it could just be, this is what's happening. Didn't expect a leaf blower. Interesting. Peace with the leaf blower. So it's that notion of not expecting an event. And we do this with enlightenment. We think we have to have I have to have a particular experience to become enlightened. Well, there's two things. It's not an experience you're going to have, and you don't become enlightened. There's no one there to become enlightened. How can an illusion become enlightened? An illusion can think that it's enlightened. Now you have an ego that thinks it's enlightened, and that's one of the most dangerous things on the planet, I think. but so an ego can think it's having an experience and then think it's enlightened, but it's not an experience that a person has. And if you think in this way, it will never occur. It will be a very difficult and impossible unfolding. It's not something that happens to a person, and it's not something that happens in time. So letting go of those beliefs. So let's say you're watching TV and a person comes in and says, what are you watching? You say, well, I'm watching a beautiful hike in the mountains. And the person says, look at the screen. Look at the screen. Can you see the screen? And when you're asked to look at the screen, you just do it, right? Oh, yeah, there's the screen. You've been fascinated by the images on the screen so that you overlooked it. You overlooked the screen itself. When somebody says, oh, look at the screen, you can go, oh, yeah, there it is. Behind all the fascinating images, the hiking in the mountains. So it's the background or the context within which the show occurs. It's the screen. And what we do is we look for enlightenment in the TV show, not the screen. Right? We're looking for an experience, which is the images on the screen. And we're not able to see the screen at all because we're so fascinated in looking for something, in this case, enlightenment, in the TV show. You might even think you can control some of the characters in the TV show. I'll go here and that'll help me become, and so on. So when you're looking at the images on the screen, it makes it difficult to see the screen. So you don't have to do anything new, right? The screen isn't anything new. It's nothing exotic, nothing extraordinary. It's not something that was lost and has to be found. Simply something that was, perhaps you could say, overlooked. went unnoticed. Hope that metaphor is somewhat helpful. It's the equivalent of in your life looking for new spiritual practices or new exotic places or new teachers where you might find enlightenment, rather than just stopping, or as I like to say, taking a step back into awareness, or the knowing capacity, that which knows. In this case, the screen is the metaphor, that which knows the TV show. The metaphor kind of breaks down, but as you go too far with it, but it's the notion that it's always there. It's just overlooked because we're so fascinated with the TV show. So it's a simple practice, right? It's a simple practice. It's rather than looking in the mind and the body, and the experience of your life, you're stepping back into awareness, as we did in the guided meditation. And this is the meditation that I guide with everybody. And the meditation that I do myself is I simply step back from the show into that which knows the show. Of course, you might get fascinated for a while. Again, some juicy thought comes up, grabs your attention, takes you away. But you will always become aware that occurred. There is something that knows that you got pulled away by a juicy thought, and then you can simply come back to resting in it. In fact, that's a powerful moment. A lot of people think that moment is some kind of failure, or mindfulness gone wrong. It's actually a very powerful moment of recognition of that which knows experience. So yeah, really, at that moment you can, I know the instruction is, once you notice that the mind's wandered, notice that the mind's wandered and gently escort your attention back to, but really I would say more so is dwell in that felt sense of that which knows, that the thought, that you're being fascinated and pulled off into a thought train, that you become a character in the TV show of your mind, and you think you're actually that character. And that which knows goes, there you are, thinking you're that character. You can just dwell in that sense of knowing. So it's a really a simple practice, but a very powerful one of like. I won't say that. I was going to say that will hasten your enlightenment, but that will allow enlightenment to naturally emerge. So do this kind of continuously, and you'll wake up to your true nature. You'll begin to see you're not all these things that you're fascinated with. That's not who you are. That you're something deeper. That which knows, and that which knows is your essential nature, which is peace and love and compassion and mudita and all those things that Jason explored with you while I was away. Those beautiful divine abodes, as the Buddha called them. We do this again and again, and eventually fewer and fewer experiences fascinate us. And by fascinate, I mean pull us into believing that that's who we are. So you can be fascinated by the beauty of the mountains. You can be fascinated by, but I mean fascinated in the sense of it becomes the focus of your life, is controlling and maneuvering with the experiences that are occurring. You, instead of struggling with life, you begin to practice Wu Wei. Is that a term people are familiar with? It's a Taoist phrase that refers to, it's often called non-doing or effortless action. When I talk about, going with the flow in the past, it's Vida laughs at me when we were on this trip. Of course, things inevitably go wrong when you're traveling, right? And I would say, what did I say? I said, don't fight the Tao, dear, because the universe is just unfolding. Don't fight it, right? Like you cannot fight that. You fight the Tao, you're fighting life, and of course you suffer. Don't fight the Tao. So when we don't fight the Tao, we live Wu Wei, which is this non-doing or effortless action, where you just wait for what is necessary in the next moment to arise spontaneously, to emerge. So fewer and fewer experiences have the power to pull us out of that Wu Wei, of that balance. And this is what is meant by abiding in our true nature, or becoming established in our true nature. Yeah. It's a recognition that we are love and we are peace. And it doesn't belong to a person. It's very impersonal. In fact, the whole process is very impersonal. And you see that everybody is. That's everybody's true nature. Yeah. I'll leave it there and open up for questions. I think I've probably poked a few a few questions there. I don't say controversial things just to elicit questions, but I think waking up has that element of saying things that shake the ego a little bit, that startle us awake. I always like to say, I'm not here to teach you how to have a better dream. Lots of people out there writing books on how to improve your dream. It's just wake up. Sometimes you just go, wake up. Did that wake anybody up? That would be an extraordinary experience if it did. Yeah, so any questions or comments? Oh, I got Manuel back here. Yeah, any questions or comments? Yes,
wanted to say, I'm awake.
You're awake, yeah. I'm going to switch mics too, just to. I muted it. Okay, next. There we go. So the computer actually picks up the sound better than my little right here. Okay, go ahead.
Thanks, Stephen. That was great, and good to have you back. I was just I had a couple questions and a comment. I love Wu-Wei, and I think of that concept almost every day, and I think I've been sitting with it lately, and other interpretations or subtle interpretations are not forcing or non-interference. And I like the non-interference because it's funny if you say like I'm gonna just go through like not interfering. Like, it's almost funny to think of it that way because you can't actually interfere. So once you realize you can't, it's like, oh, I can just kind of go here and allow things to unfold. Two questions. One was you often hear, and this is even amongst like long-term meditators that are associated with like maybe a certain lineage or something that they're setting they highly encourage setting enlightenment as a goal. And so I've always thought it better to kind of have Micah's approach, not having going in without expectations and not having a set goal, and just seeing how things unfold. So I'm wondering if you could comment on that. And the other thing is the concept that they talk about, they emphasize in some Zen circles of Satori. And I'm just wondering how that kind of like all fits in here. Because you hear about people having Satori just like out of the blue, all of a sudden they're like, have this big experience. I'm just wondering what your kind of like thoughts on those two, so the Satori and the goal, and the goal.
Yeah, all traditions, I think, in some way set up a goal. Theravada Buddhism, it's the 3 stages of enlightenment, right? Your stream enter, four stages, and Tibetan Buddhism, there's the 8 stages of emptiness. I think it's 8 or 10. There's a bunch of more stages. So they're setting up actually not only the goal of enlightenment, but the little goals along the way. I think so setting up a goal. So if the ego sets up a goal to become enlightened, it becomes an ego project, right? Which I think is different than an aspiration. I use the word aspiration. I mean, they're just words, but for me, it has a different flavor that comes from a deeper place than the egoic mind wanting something. The ego wants to be better, wants to fill its sense of lack. It never goes away. Right? The ego has a sense of lack, it never goes away. It tries to do things, be better, fulfill that sense of lack, and one of them can become the enlightenment. So it's seeing if that is the way that the goal is constructed and seeing through that. Which is different, I think, from there's a deeper aspiration that can occur, that can arise. You don't really know what it is, in a sense. It's not, it's not an egoic project. So I think being tuned into it in that way can be helpful. And all the stages that that are kind of outlined in the teachings can become kind of signposts along the way, without getting too. I spent a couple of years with Matthew studying I forget how many stages of emptiness there are, and going through each one. And I just kind of thought, well, it's interesting. They're interesting signposts, but I quickly forgot them because I didn't want to set up to get to this stage, and then to get to this stage, and then to get to this stage. And all those stages really point out to what I've been saying in terms of seeing who we're not, seeing who we are, or what we are, and seeing the nature of what we are. You can call those stages, I guess. I don't think they happen as stages. I think they just kind of, right? I think we see what we're not, at the same time we're seeing what we are. We're seeing peace and love that's there all the time, that we can touch into at any moment, start to see all of it. Zen, they do speak a lot more about extraordinary experiences, right? Just sit, just sit, zaza, and Satori.
Wednesdays, especially.
Renze and Soto, yeah, the two that are, they're in there. They're going to say it'll take 2 decades or something for it to occur. I think in Theravada, the Buddha said maybe 7 years, maybe a lot longer. So there's even date, people, well, how long will it take, kind of thing. If I meditate this much time, but these are questions that teachers get, right? It's the ego wanting to know, like, if I invest this much time, will I become enlightened? So they can get all those stages and so on can get in the way if they're misinterpreted and misused. But can be helpful in the right hands as signposts towards deeper aspirations. Yeah, I guess that's all I would say. Yeah. Look at the Buddha's enlightenment. I love the Buddha's enlightenment story, sitting under the tree. There's no fireworks went off. There's no blazing things. It's pretty subtle. I mean, he kind of opened his eyes and went, I can't teach this. And he closed his eyes. Sat there for much longer trying to figure out, what do I do with this? I mean, it was extraordinary in the sense of, well, this is like, beyond what the ego could conceive, right? So it's beyond what your mind can conceive, because your mind's part of it, part of the suffering. But it was really just a kind of a subtle occurrence, and it happened over time, right? He had a lot of different things that occurred in his life that led to that moment. Yes, Nina. Oh, yeah.
I always find it kind of, almost a foreign concept, this enlightenment. I enjoyed the topic, and it's good to ponder that and to sort of explore that concept, and it's all good stuff, and it kind of, I don't know, it's part of I would say the landscape of what we're all about here, what we're exploring. And though I always go back to what I learned from you at one point in your talks, that when it struck me that when you said Buddhist philosophy is all sort of based on or about, it's all about eliminating or minimizing suffering. And so for me, that's the attraction, or that's why the mindfulness resonates. It's because there is a peace, there is a letting go, there is less suffering. and so I, rightly or wrongly, I don't really see the two concepts as related. I never think about enlightenment, but in some way, surely they're related. So just kind of I'm always surprised at that concept when it's talked about. So any thoughts on that would be super interesting.
Yeah. The the quote from which I haven't quoted in a while, Ajahn Chah's if you let go a little, find a little peace. If you let go a lot, you find a lot of peace. If you let go completely, complete peace. Kind of points to what you're asking about. So you can talk about, there's lots of teachings about, we let go a little, we, so which means we let go of attachments, which means we struggle less, right? Because we're not attached to something, you don't struggle to either get it or get rid of it. So there's a little piece. And those are glimpses of the peace. That's why you can have a little peace, and then you can let go. So you see, wow, letting go a little. This I can touch into this peace. It's there. You let go a little more. Go a little attachments, self-view, a little more, and wow, there's a little more peace. And you start to dwell in that peace. You start to say, wow, this peace is actually always here. And it seems to be around all the time, and everything else seems to be quickly coming and going. And then you have ultimate peace. So really, suffering and the end of suffering is that gradual burning off of the suffering that can occur. And that's why I say it's for most of us, it's that kind of gradual process. It's not something where you just go, all of a sudden, I'm never going to react to anything ever again. And and some extraordinary event, it convinces you that to do that. I think that's quite rare. So the reason I gave this talk was to invite people to really realize that complete peace is very possible if you let go of the belief that it's difficult, and very possible if you suspend the belief that it's got to be attached to some extraordinary event. And if you let go of the belief, or suspend the belief, or just question, how do I know this belief's true or not? Just suspend it. That it's something that's going to happen to you as a person. So I guess I'm nudging you, Anita, towards the complete peace part. Yeah, which I've been doing for a while here. I started out with happiness talks, and that was really more kind of more. And you know what? You send me away for 3 weeks on my own, and come back with a talk like this, and so that's just what happens, right? Maybe I'll go back to some more about the ways in which we can touch that peace in our lives, that happiness. Yeah. I sent out this talk. I get messages when people unsubscribe from the mailing lists. I sent out the talk, and I started getting all these unsubscribed messages. I thought, oh boy, I guess maybe I should go back to the little happiness talk, little peace talks, which I think more people come to mindfulness for, right? It seems to be more accessible than to talk about enlightenment. I'm trying to make enlightenment accessible and um, uh, yeah, accessible and direct and light and important and something, yeah, something that um, we can all emerge with. Yes, Lori.
Yeah, hi, Stephen. Yeah, thank you so much for the talk. I think what has often thrown a wrench in my practice is the belief that to attain enlightenment, it's necessary to realize emptiness. I know some schools of Buddhism purport that. And to me, emptiness has always been a really tricky term. And it's something that can't be described in words. So, yeah, I'm wondering if you have any comments about that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. Yeah, emptiness is one of those words that doesn't sound too appealing, but it really describes the notion of in a way it's partly seeing what we are not, right? That this is all it's empty of true nature, body, mind, mental formations, and so on. Sense consciousness, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, is all empty. And when you see that you're not all that, you also see that the next thing that unfolds is a seeing that you're everything. So emptiness is seeing that you're nothing, in a way, right? Partly. It's more than that within the Tibetan teachings. But the flip side of that is you're also everything. So you're nothing in the sense of what you think you are, because you think we think we're the minds, the bodies, the separate little selves. It's the black line going around the space. And we think so we're seeing that we're not that, but when we see that we're empty and we're nothing as egos, we can see that we're actually everything, right? Because we're connected to the whole, and the whole is everything, and we're as one with that whole. We are, in fact, everything at the same time that we're nothing. So we're at the same time we're empty, we're also completely full. Right? At the same time, we're completely full. We spent some time on emptiness teachings historically. Yeah, and I let go of the notion of that word. Think of emptiness as meaning fullness. Right? Just like you think of nothing meaning everything. So if somebody says you're nothing, yeah. So is it a Zen story or maybe it's I think it might be a Christian story that the priest is. I think it's the cleaner that's cleaning up, and the cleaner says, "So excuse me, I'm in your way. I'm nothing." And the priest goes, "Oh, look at this guy! He's so full of himself. He thinks he's nothing." So he's to the priest that nothing means everything, right? It's everything. So if you see that you're nothing, you're nobody, right? Is at the same time seeing that you're everything, everybody. everything. So that's why I say look at emptiness as meaning fullness and nothingness meaning everything.
That helps explain the phrase form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. Form is, form is nothing and nothing is everything.
Yeah. There's the emptiness. The emptiness is also the fullness. The suffering is also part of of everything. So there's no separation. It's not like there's a world of suffering here, and you got to get out of that world to get into the world of peace and happiness. It's all the same everything.
Well, I guess that would kind of explain samsara and nirvana, that they're not really two separate things. They're the same, depending on perspective, I guess.
Yeah. So samsara is not seeing things clearly, being on the wheel, right? Of desire, of clinging. And nirvana is seeing that clearly. So you kind of way to step off the wheel of samsara, the way that the Buddha used, or maybe it's my interpretation of the way that Buddha used those terms, but that's how I kind of see nirvana is the burning away of that being on that samsaric wheel and seeing clearly the way things really are. That's how suffering was created, was through that struggle with life, with that clinging, pushing away, then creates those 12. Is it 12? Yeah, it's 12 steps of suffering that are on the wheel. I've got my list guy here that will make sure that I always get the numbers wrong. I know it's more than, I think it's 12. Yeah.
Yeah, 12.
12. Yeah. The 12 elements that go into suffering, from contact to rebirth. Yeah.
Thanks, Stephen. That's really helpful.
Welcome. So I won't send out another talk that's got this title. I was thinking Wu Wei would be a really nice. I don't know if that would be of interest. It's because it's kind of like some people think, well, if you talk about how you behave in the world or move in the world when you're enlightened, that it wouldn't make any sense, right? If you're not. But the truth is, you can actually move in the world because as if you're enlightened, because you are enlightened. You are that peace. So it's a way of like I said, would say divided, let's not fight the Tao here. We can just be with the flow here. Whatever it is, it may not look pleasant, but who knows what will unfold? Who knows? It's that kind of don't know mind that comes into it as well. And then see what can spontaneously arise out of not fighting. It doesn't mean you become a doormat. In fact, you, as I often say, you actually become more engaged in the world, just not in a sense of struggle. So that's something that we could explore further. But I'll see what comes up over the next week. Could also go back to the happiness themes that we were exploring. Yeah. So that's our time is up. Want to meditate again? We can meditate for another half hour. Anyway, I have troubles. I'm enjoying your company so much. It's There's a difficulty rising and ending it, right? Yeah. But I will see you all next week. Take care, everybody.
Nice to have you back, Stephen. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Bye, everybody.
Adios, senor.
Adios.
Adios.
Night.
How's your Spanish? Any better?
Oh, yeah, you have to speak Spanish in Chile. There's not a lot of English there. I was, quite surprised. But yeah, it came along pretty
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Next session's in Spanish.
See?
I
That's
second that.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, then Manuel can correct me. Yeah. Okay, take care, everybody. See you later.
Hey, bye.
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 Times of it feeling like it was just dragging on.